Hi, my name is Steve Bannicky. I currently live in Royal Oak, and I am about to discuss Detroit's recent bankruptcy, which was a travesty in my opinion. Before doing that, I would like to tell you a little bit about my background. I'm 69 years old, have a master's degree in finance from Michigan State, and received my CPA from the state of Michigan in 1972. I stopped renewing my license in the mid-1980s because I had no intention of practicing accounting going forward at that time. I spent most of my adult life in the financial services industry, being in senior management positions at two financial institutions in the late 1970s and early 1980s. The last one was in the Renaissance building in Detroit. Afterwards, I owned two mortgage brokerage companies, one in residential lending and the other financed commercial real estate transactions, which were made by large insurance companies like Metropolitan Life. I also taught a finance class in college for a short period of time. The bankruptcy in Detroit I like to call the Detroit Great Art Heist. Per Jones Day, who is was the lead attorney for the city of Detroit in the bankruptcy, a bankruptcy court cannot appoint a trustee to operate the municipality or allow a secured creditor to force the sale of assets to satisfy the secured creditor's lien. There's a link on the screen that will lead you to the article from Jones Day if you would like to read it. The long and short of it is Detroit was not required to sell the art to pay its debts. That was a decision made by the emergency manager and ultimately Rick Snyder, the governor of Michigan. An important question is, what is the value of the art owned by Detroit? And there was some confusion. Here is what was contained in the initial plan to creditors in June 2013 concerning the DIA. This plan was presented to them by Kevin Orr, the emergency manager. Basically, it says that the emergency manager met with the representatives of the DIA that currently operate the Detroit Institute of Art to discuss the arts collection exhibit there. It ended up where they decided that the Detroit Institute of Art was contending that the collection cannot be used to help pay debts, and that they hold the art exhibit in trust for the public, and further talks are needed. As far as the value of the art, one indication was in an article by Nolan Finley of the Detroit News. He said, quote, "$25 billion or above, somebody call Roger Penske and order a moving van. If, as expected, it comes in at 10 to 15 billion, the $500 million or wants is reasonable. But if the number is more astronomical," it goes on from there. This quote I've taken from a blog, and I've again provided the hyperlink to it if you would like to look at it. What is interesting is I tried to go on to the Detroit News to find the article, and they indicated that it was no longer available on the internet. I find that very interesting and to some extent somewhat disturbing. Why isn't it there? It's not that old. What is the value of art given away? We have been told there never was an appraisal of all the art, although I wonder if that's the case. Towards the end of the reorganization, there were two appraisals completed for the art stored at the DIA that was actually purchased by the city and not received from donors, one by the emergency manager and one by a creditor. Side note, one of the interesting comments that the emergency manager made through this process is that he decided not to get an appraisal on the entire works of art at the DIA. I guess he felt that the appraisal would, because the appraisal cost would be too high and the legal cost. Well, it's interesting. The value at that point in time being discussed mostly was at $10 billion. And I doubt very much if the appraisal and the legal cost would have risen that high. Per an article in the New York Times, a new assessment of the potential value of the collection of the Detroit Institute of Arts determined the artwork could be worth as much as $8.5 billion. At the same time, there was also a local television station, I believe it was Channel 4, but I'm not positive, and it said, quote, an art market advisory company says treasures in Detroit's art museum eyed for sale by some creditors in the city's bankruptcy could be worth $4.6 billion. There's quite a difference between the two appraisals, but even at $4.6 billion, it's quite high. And also remember that these two appraisals did not appraise all of the art in the art museum. Even if the art was only worth $4.6 billion, why did Snyder give it away for $800 million, which would be less in present value terms? As governor, the state of Michigan, Snyder has a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens of the state and Michigan, including Detroit. How can he justify giving away billions of dollars in assets for pennies on the dollar? The answer is he can't. I don't see how he can. Conclusion. Filing for bankruptcy under Chapter 9 was the right thing to do. The city owed something like $18 billion in debt, and it could not continue to pay its debt service and provide services to the citizens. Disposing of the art during bankruptcy was the wrong thing to do. It should not have done that. In the worst case basis, getting a loan for $800 million and using some of the art as collateral would have been much wiser. After bankruptcy, the art could have been sold over time without a fire sale to improve schools, reduce blight, tackle the water shutoff issue, improve mass transit, and reduce crime. Here is the result of the bankruptcy. The bankruptcy, as concluded, results in many residents continuing to live in poverty, schools not having sufficient funds to improve, crime rates not decreasing outside of the downtown core area, which is policed by a private organization owned by Gilbert, no funds to improve mass transit so Detroiters who cannot afford a car can get to where the jobs are. They're stuck. There's not a lot of jobs in Detroit right now, and they do not have transportation to go to the suburbs. The result is a continued loss of population that is sinking into the abyss. It all could have been